Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this e-Sgoil live learning session, which has been created as part of the National e-Learning Offer. My name is David Downham, and I'm a Deputy Head here at e-Sgoil, and I will be the presenter. This evening is the second of a two-part transition mental health series. So if you haven't seen the first part, you can find it on the e-Sgoil website where you found the link for tonight. I am delighted to welcome back our guest today, Brian Costello, who is the director of the company Headstrong, who works tirelessly to help improve the mental health and well-being of young people and adults across Scotland. I will now hand over to Brian himself for this evening's session.
Superb. I'm on screen. Fantastic. I don't know how you guys are seeing me, but potentially my slightly dodgy broadband has me all pixelated, but hopefully it's coming through okay wherever you are. Good evening. It is absolutely lovely and a delight to be back with you again for the second of these sessions. Thank you to David and the team at e-Sgoil as well for the invite to talk to you tonight. If you haven't, as David just said, if you haven't seen the previous session, don't worry about it. Everything that I'm going to talk about tonight, I'm going to do a very quick recap of what we talked about last time. But tonight's going to stand alone. So albeit that you're definitely going to benefit if you've seen the first session, it's not a necessity to have seen the first session by the time you come on to watch this one. A little bit of housekeeping. We'll be on until around about 6:30. And also, we are more than happy to take any and all questions that you might have. So if you do have a question, then please put it in the chat box, which is somewhere around me just now. I don't know exactly where, but put it in the chat box and it will come through and I'll be able to see it on my screen and I will answer it for you. We might not get time, we've only got half an hour, so we might not get time to answer every question, but my hope is that we'll get a chance to answer at least one or two. And if there's loads, then that's fine. We're obviously here tonight to talk about the mental health of transition, so the shift between primary 7 and first year. And this has a huge impact on the mental health of our children. As I said to you last time, when I do my mental health work, so when I'm doing like my one-to-one sessions or even when we're doing workshops, especially when it gets to like 4th year and 5th year, if you ask 4th and 5th year where big shifts happened, there's a variety of them, but one of the most common times for them to find a shift in their mental health is between primary 7 and first year. Interestingly enough, when we speak to the adults and we speak to you guys, interestingly enough, one of the most common things that comes up, even after all of these years, I mean, obviously, what's it been for you? 6, 7 years since you left school? Obviously, look at you. You look fantastic. Oh, really? You're that age? I would never have guessed. You're looking fantastic. But whatever age you are, when you leave school, you think, oh, I'll leave all this behind, and actually we carry it with us. So there is a certain element of this that if we can get this right, then what we have is we have a prevention rather than a cure. So what we talked about last time was we talked about the idea of mental health being an inside-out process. So I showed you that by thinking about lemons, that your mouth starts to water. And what this shows is that when we replace that lemon with something like, I'm not good enough, or everybody's better than me, or nobody likes me, what happens is we get this shift that happens, because in the same way your mouth waters if you think about lemon, in that same way you'll get anxiety, worries, sadness, anger, frustration, insert a whole heap of emotions here when you are thinking about things like I'm not good enough or nobody likes me. The other thing we talked about was that as a parent, the days now of you being able to give 2 spoons of Calpol and do you ever do 2 spoons of Calpol? Have I forgotten how many? I think that's too many, isn't it? Don't give 2 spoons of Calpol. I think it's only 1 spoon of Calpol you give. Anyway, read the bottle. None of this constitutes medical advice, can I just say. So however many spoons of Calpol you're meant to give, you give the spoon of Calpol or 2, depending on what age they are, and then you give them a cuddle and everything's better. That actually, as parents, when our kids get to around about primary 7 first year, we are now well on the way to our job as a parent changing, where the inside is affecting our kids much more than the outside. So we are now got a big troop of what have we got? Tens of thousands of 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds all over Scotland who are about to go through the biggest change that they have ever experienced. And therefore, it's important that you're ready for it. Now, one of the things that we talked about a little bit last time was, and now I'm going to disappear and I'm going to be very fancy pants and I'm going to show you my screen. I'm going to share some slides with you. I'm not on the screen, unfortunately, while the slides are on, but know that I'm here and I'm thinking of you. If I go quiet for any prolonged period of time, I'm more than likely having a drink of tea. I sometimes forget that even though you can't see me, that I still have to talk, you know. Can't just take random cups of tea. I just go quiet for a few minutes, or a few seconds, not a few minutes. Keep talking to you. Anyway, right, let's put this screen up. So one of the things that we talked about was the difference between logic and emotion. We talked about how logical thoughts are this externally focused way of thinking, and they're not the problem. So our young people quite often say, but I know I've got friends, or I know that she or he's my best friend, or I know that there won't be too much homework, but... And if we put our focus on all that logical thought, on all of this external stuff, what actually happens is we only get short-term impacts. It's like sticking plasters over huge, great, big gaping wounds. It doesn't fix for very long. But this is the thing, is as parents, this is what we're used to. If we start to think about emotional thoughts, though, we start to get into this internal focus, what it is that's going on inside the mind of our children. This is all based on perception, and this is where the problem is. The problem is not what's happening on the outside. I'm not saying that we don't have problems on the outside. Obviously we do, but what I'm trying to tell you is that the bulk of the problem is on the inside. Sometimes there's bullying. Sometimes people say horrible things. Sometimes things are hard. Sometimes there is too much homework. Sometimes it all does move too fast. But the simple fact is that that's all the outside stuff. We can handle that. But if you've got a wee person with some sort of internal thought, like, again, I'm not good enough or everybody's better than me, then that's going to be where the problem is. So if we focus here, we get this sustainable impact. Right, let me talk to you very briefly about rainbows. Right, let's imagine that, as far as I know, I didn't do this example last week, but we did this with the kids earlier on in the schools. So let me just jump back on screen just for a little bit. So imagine that we go out of your house, and as we walk out of your house, there's a beautiful rainbow in the sky, okay? Beautiful rainbow in the sky. And what happens is that we're with a group of people, and somebody in the group turns around and says, oh my God, look at that rainbow. Isn't God wonderful? Whichever God it is that they worship, and they look at this rainbow and they say, isn't God wonderful? Because God has given us earth with which to be on and to worship, or whatever their set of beliefs is. But they put that rainbow down to a religious or spiritual thing. The person next to them, and I'm very well aware that you can be both of these, but for the purpose of this argument, I'm going to separate them. The person next to them says, that's nothing to do with spirituality or God, that's purely science. And what that is the refraction of water, the refraction of light through water droplets in the upper atmosphere, and that's what causes this rainbow. And they now have some sort of theological argument at the end of our line. What then happens is that we notice that one of our people is in tears. And what happens is we turn around and we ask them if they're okay. And they turn around and say, when my granny died, she said she'd send me a rainbow every time she was thinking of me. And I really needed this today. And this person's having this beautiful moment, reconnecting to a long lost relative who once upon a time said, I'll send you a rainbow every time you need it. And this person's having a great moment. We look at it and we go, oh, well, it must have stopped raining. Isn't that good? And the sun's come out. Brilliant. Isn't that beautiful? Maybe we even take a picture of it. I don't know. Now, the point here is not about the rainbow. The point is about the emotional response that all of us have to that rainbow. Each of us has a unique response to it because it means something different to everybody that looks at it. Now, I'm not saying it means something different to us all. I get that there'll be shared belief systems, etc. But within our little group, that's how it works. Now, this is important to mental health. Why? Because the meaning of things is exactly what causes our mental health to flare up and to change and to do all the things that our mental health does. Here's a little phrase for you. If there is no meaning, then there is no feeling. So if there's no meaning, there is no feeling. That's as simple as that. If your brain, if your mind has if the thing that you're looking at, experiencing, touching, watching, hearing, whatever it is, has absolutely no meaning to you, if your brain can't find even the slightest bit of meaning, you will create no emotions. Now, that's important because it means that when emotions do show up, we know that something has triggered a meaning inside somebody's head. Now, it's not the thing itself, it's the meaning of that thing. So, for example, if we went for a walk just now and we walked past a dog, for example. Now, I'm a big dog person. I've got a wee dog that you might actually hear scratching at the door occasionally because he can hear his dad pure talking in here and he can't get to him. I'm a dog person. So if I see a wee dog, I'll go, oh, that's very nice. But because of what I do for a living, I meet lots of people who are terrified of little dogs. It doesn't matter how sweet it is. The meaning to you is, oh, he's just a wee sweetie. He'll just want to lick you. He doesn't bite. But to this person, the meaning is terrifying. Now, this very much comes into moving to high school. For some of our 11 and 12-year-olds, for some of our primary sevens, the move to high school is supremely exciting. Like, they are absolutely cannot wait. They're absolutely ready for it. We look at them as parents and we go, do you know what? They are ready for that move to high school. They're ready for that transition up, you know, maturity-wise, intelligence-wise. It's probably even good for many of them. But for some of them, it brings with it the meaning of, I'm going to be moved away from my friends. I'm going to get lost. It's going to be busy. It's going to be, somebody asked in the P7 session earlier on today, is it claustrophobic in the corridors when everybody moves? So inside their head, and that lemon thinking that we talked about, this poor young person is running this set of thoughts that because when they're going to walk out of a classroom, it's just going to be wall-to-wall people. Now, it is, and when you're small, you can't get away from the fact that it is a little bit like that. And it's also okay because everybody's moving in the one direction. And trying to get this over to primary sevens can sometimes be a real challenge because this is what it means to them. They think about high school and the meaning they put on it is all of these things. So what I want to give you tonight is I want to give you some questions because we need to get into that inside world. We need to get into that meaning. Let's imagine that nobody in our rainbow group, right, in our rainbow troop here that go for the walk and see the rainbow, imagine all of us just look at the rainbow and smile. Because we're all having our own experience. One person is having a spiritual experience. One person is remarking at the incredible science that they're seeing right in front of them. One person is having this moment with their long-lost relative. And we're looking at it going, well, at least it's clearing up now. Maybe it'll be nice tomorrow. We'll have a barbecue. We're all smiling. And it's very, very easy to assume that all of us are having the same experience because we're all smiling at this rainbow when actually what's happening inside is we're all having a completely different experience. And therefore, it's very easy as parents, especially if this maybe isn't your first one to go to high school, to go, oh, your brother was okay, your brother was fine, or your sister managed absolutely no problem at all, or I was fine when I was at primary school and then went to high school, and think that that should be the same for them. What we have to do as parents is we have to stop, we have to slow down, and we have to check on what's actually going on for our kids. And how we do that is by asking good questions. I'm going to share my screen again, and just before we get to the questions, I want to just give you a little bit of a heads up because this will be recorded. So I want to capture this slide on the recording because this will show you what to look for. Now, remember, just before I disappear off the screen, if you have any questions tonight, then I will be answering them maybe from about 20, 25 past. If there's no questions at all, I'm more than happy to fill the half hour with more information. So don't worry about it. If you don't have a question, I'm not pressuring you for one. If you do have one, put it in your chat box. How many times will you get the opportunity to speak to someone who is a mental health expert who can talk to you about how to help your kids? Please just remember that anything you put in the chat box, though, is public information and therefore everybody will see it. So you can find me if you need to ask a question in private. But anyway, let me just jump this slide up. So how do we know if somebody's going through something? Well, what we're looking for is we're looking for emotional signals. Now, most of these, especially in your kids, you will be tuned into. What you need to do, though, is you need to trust yourself as a parent that when these things are happening, that you are picking up on something. So any change to normal behavior, so if they were always very outgoing and loud and all of a sudden they've gone quiet, if they were always quiet and now all of a sudden they're very loud, emotional swings. Now, some of you are thinking, Brian, that's been going on for ages. That isn't anything to do with the primary 7 transition. And you might be right. There is hormones and all sorts starting. And if we ever get to do another one of these sessions, maybe I'll get to speak to you about that. But for just now, the emotional swings are like big emotional swings to anxiety, for instance. You're not going to be able to paper over anxiety by telling them that everything's going to be okay. Physical shifts or fidgeting, so they just can't sit still. Again, some of you are thinking, my God, Brian, this is just my life day to day. But again, we're looking for it being a change to the normal. It's shut down silence. So like, how are things? Fine. This type of thing. And just that break where all of a sudden you can't get through. And the answer, I don't know. Now, I don't know is a very, very common answer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a couple of ways to get through that. Now, I don't know. In fact, let's just go there as a first question. This question is not on the slides, but just as an easy question that you can ask, I'll just jump back off that again, and then I'll put it back on in a wee second. The easy way to get through I don't know is to think about that logical and or logical thinking and emotional thinking. So it's the question I gave you the last time in the last session. What is it that your mind is telling you is going to happen, even though you might know that that's a bit bonkers or that it's not going to happen that way? So what is it that your mind is telling you? Because the reason they're saying I don't know is because they're focused on the outside world and they're going, but everything in my outside world seems okay, or I understand it, but I can't understand why I'm feeling this way. So we need to break through that. So what is it that your mind is telling you is the way that you're going to break through the I don't know. Quite often you'll still get an I don't know, but then followed up with what's going on. Your job as a parent is to not dismiss it. So I don't know what it is. I just feel as if everybody hates me. Now, if you come in and say, no, everybody loves you, you've missed your opportunity. Because it was that phrase, everybody hates me, or I don't think anybody likes me. That's them telling you what's running on that screen in your head. So once that happens, you're going to follow up with some of these questions that I'm about to give you just now. Let me just jump back onto the slides again. Okay, so I'm going to have to race through these because we've only got 13 minutes, but you can find these like on here again. So if you need a recap, remember you can replay this video at any time you want to. So what we need to do first, just like the rainbow thing, is we need to discover the meaning. And how we're going to do that is by asking the question, funnily enough, what does that mean? So as an example, now this is just one example out of a million, but I get really panicky when I think about exams, or I get really panicky when I think about moving to high school. Okay, tell me, what does panicky mean? And we're picking out the bit of the sentence. Now, you want, when they say, I get really panicky when I think about like going to high school, hopefully they're not panicking about exams yet. I actually only just realised that the example in this could have been easily changed to suit this presentation. So apologies for that. But your job, when you think about this, the traditional parent job is to run in and give them a hug and try and take the panicky away. What we want to do is we want to know what the panicky means. So what does panicky mean to you? So does it mean that they want to run away? Does it mean that they get angry? Does it mean that they're getting upset? And the reason that's a really powerful question is because panicky is just like a rainbow. It's subjective. It's like, it means different things to different people. So what we need to find out is what panicky means, because some of it, as I was discussing with them earlier on today and last week, is entirely natural. It's normal to be a wee bit anxious about things that we don't know. Sometimes kids will put words like panicky on something when actually what they mean is they're anxious. Now, just a different form of that is that you can say, and that means. So my mum keeps telling me I'm going to fail, and that means. So for example, we just keep the sentence going. You ask it like you're just keeping the sentence going. I'm worried about going to, in fact, let me show you the next one. I'm worried about going to high school because, now, as you see, unfortunately, I must apologise. I'm really looking at these a wee bit frustrated at myself that I didn't realise. I thought these were quite generic, but obviously I've changed the questions on these slides at some point to be very for upper school, but just replace them for that kind of lower school thing. So my mum keeps telling me I'm going to fail, and that means, or every time somebody mentions school, every time somebody mentions high school, I get really panicky because, and you ask it like a question and you don't fill in the answer, right? So you don't fill in the answer. You don't go because are you upset? Is it because somebody said something to you? I bet you that was that wee Charlie, wasn't it? That's Charlie. He said things to you. You don't do that. All you do is you just ask the question and you just leave it there, looking for somebody to answer it. And you leave it to them to answer it. If you say, I don't know, then you just recap and you say, well, what you said was, thank you, you're being really honest. This is all about understanding. So you're going to have to take your time about this. And as a parent, that means that sometimes you might have to stop doing stuff. I know you're busy. You're a busy woman or a busy man, but you're going to have to stop doing things to be able just to stop and ask these questions. Give it your full attention. That means something to them in itself. So every time somebody mentions high school, I get really panicky because, and if they say, I don't know, you say, okay, so what you said was you get really panicky. So what does panicky mean? Oh, my heart starts to go and my head goes all funny. Excellent. Now you could keep on going. When you say your head keeps on going all funny, what does that mean that your head goes funny? Don't assume you know the answer, because the chances are as they get older, and this is going to help you all the way through, by the way, even when they're adults. My two kids are 23 and 21 now. And it still helps me. They get frustrated with these questions now because I've been asking them for so many years. But you just keep on asking the same questions. There's no need to try and be fancy about it. What you're doing is you're discovering what this all means. You're discovering what the rainbow means. And the rainbow, obviously, in this case, just to be very explicit, is going to high school. So when you think about going to high school, what does that mean? I get panicky because I just keep on thinking that nobody will like me. Because, because I'm sometimes a little bit weird. Now, at this point, you could ask either question. You think you're a little bit weird, and that means, oh, well, people don't like weird people. Okay, because, is being weird not okay? What does being weird mean? And you literally, I could show you this slide, this one thing, and you would be absolutely golden. You'd be off and running, streets ahead of the questions that most parents ask. If a kid comes home and says, I'm worried about going to high school, the normal first question is, don't be silly. Or what are you worried about? And what they'll then do is they'll give you external answers. What you're saying is, what does that mean? And that means because what you're doing is you're finding out what goes on inside. Now, there's another set of questions we can ask. So this is just number one. So here's number two. What we now want to do is we now want to get specific. So we want to get the details. Now, these are in no particular order. You ask the question that fits the situation, not like how Brian has put them on a slide. That's really completely and utterly, what's the word I'm looking for? I've just stuck them on the slides, basically, in no particular order. There's no preconceived, oh, you ask them this way. So you just ask what suits the situation best. So the first one is what, how, when, and who specifically. So for example, again, I get really panicky when I think about exams. I really should have checked these slides before. I must apologize. I knew there was a mistake in the slide somewhere, and I thought it was to do with the animation. I went and fixed all the animation earlier on this afternoon and forgot that it was this. I get really panicky when I think about exams. What you're going to ask is, what specifically is it that you are panicky about? So what specifically? Oh, someone said, okay, someone said, who specifically said? Or one of the teachers in high school said, okay, which teacher in high school said? Because what you're looking for is the specifics. The more information you can get about the specifics that are going on, the better you will be placed. What you're doing at this point is you're unpacking their head, getting any information in. Okay, so here's another one. I can't find a study technique that works for me. So let's say that would be, I'm not making any friends once they've started. I've tried everything. You could say, okay, what things have you tried so far? Does that make sense? So you're looking for the specifics, because I bet you they've not tried everything. I'm going to give you an even better question for that in a little second. Or something like, I keep on getting lost. I just can't remember my timetable. And you go, what is it that you keep on forgetting specifically? Now, I know that question sounds a little bit funny, you know, you're using a specifically thing all the time, but it is actually really powerful. And using it, if somebody says, I can't remember my timetable, and it goes, what can't you remember off your timetable? Just like all of my classes. You see, I give them room. I give somebody room to be able to go somewhere else. But if I shut down that room with a word like specifically, all of a sudden I get something else. So I can't remember my timetable. What is it you can't remember about it specifically? All of a sudden, much more powerful. You could also ask, like, I can't remember my timetable, and you go, what does that mean? What does it mean you can't remember it? Oh, I only remember 10%, like 10 of my classes. Excellent. How many classes have you got specifically? Oh, I've got 15. Anyway, and then the last one. Let's hope that this slide goes by okay, although it is going to mention exams again. And this is good fun, this one, because I think this is one that most people can pick up on like really, really quickly. We call it breaking the universals. Now, these words are just examples of universals, as I would call them. So what I mean by a universal is, I mean a set of saying things that like take everything in. So everything, all, no one, it never, it's like completely like infinite. It's like everything is a problem. No one likes me, these types of things. What you're going to do is you're going to be able to, or you're going to ask the question back or take that word back and you're going to ask it like a question. So I've never been able to make friends. Never been able to make friends. So I know my voice is going ridiculously high. You don't need to do that bit, but never been able to make friends. Now, as it says there, you could follow it with a counter example, which is, but you went to dancing class recently and it was a brand new dancing class and now you can't wait to go because you've got loads of friends there. Yeah, but that's different. All right, it's different. Can you tell me how specifically it's different? So how is this different? Oh, well, but that was dance class and that means... you see how they all work together? By the time you've learned them all, if you just practice them a little bit, they become so powerful. It's like if I could download this into the head, which is why these are here, because the last group of parents I taught these questions to were concerned about exams. If I could show you this and download this into every parent head, I promise it would be incredible the change we'd make in young people. Here's another example. I'm just stupid, everyone knows. Yay, one that doesn't mention exams. I'm just stupid, everyone knows. Everyone? And then you could follow it up like with something suitably passively aggressive. It's like, sorry, I didn't get that information. Nobody sent me over that memo that you were stupid. Sorry, was it sent by email? Where would I find it? Did the school send out a text? Is that where it is? Now, what we're doing is we're trying to make them laugh at their own problem. We're not making fun of them. We're not trying to belittle them for thinking this. That's not what we're doing. I've got to admit that little bit there is about just trying to kind of get them to lighten up and realize that what they're saying isn't actually real. No one wants to be my friend. What, no one wants to be your friend? I thought you said earlier on that you went for lunch with Martin. Yeah, well, Martin's different, and he's different because... You see, again, it's just all working together. And then one last example, someone like me will never say make a friend, or someone like me will never be clever enough to go to university. And genuinely, we actually do hear this from first years sometimes, which is a wee bit sad at that stage that they're already worried about these things, but it's like you. So what I'm showing you here is an example of one of every single one. So someone like you, what does that mean? And who specifically is someone like you? That's someone like me? Like you're asking them to, what does that actually mean? So does that make sense? So let me jump the slides off since they're full of mentions of exams when your kids are literally in primary 7. But I'm sure you're going to forgive me for that. If you don't, please send me an email and tell me that you don't forgive me, at which point I'll forgive myself. These things happen. But I think you got the general point. So what we're looking for tonight, what I want you to understand tonight is that you have to get inside their head. There is no other way inside their head when they reach this age, when they reach 11, 12 years old, and now for the rest of their lives, the only way inside their head is by getting them to talk about what's inside their head. The more or the older and older they get, the less and less you will understand about what goes on inside their mind unless you ask the questions to find out. And what many parents do is they make assumptions that they know. So how do we do that? 3 questioning techniques. Number 1, finding out the meaning, which is what does that mean, or and that means and because. So we just simply ask the question, whatever it is, and that means because. That genuinely is one of the most powerful questioning techniques you can get. Try it out, test it on your partner if you have one, and see what happens. But please, again, if you end up having a big row, don't contact me. I mean, ultimately, I'm just giving you the questions. That's all I'm doing. So you might want to soften them up sometimes. But anyway, what does that mean? And that means because. The next ones, which is the one you definitely want to soften, which is what specifically, where specifically, when specifically. So I feel really strange. What specifically or where specifically do you feel really strange? Or when do you feel strange? I felt strange in school today, or I had a horrible day in school today. What specifically was horrible about it? Do you see, even when I say that, I had a horrible day in school today, there's actually no wrong way to ask the question about that. I had a horrible day in school today. What does that mean? I had a horrible day in school today. What specifically was horrible about it? You really can't go wrong. I've pretty much made you bulletproof. You've always got a question to ask. And then finally, breaking the universals that children will use all the time. Everyone doesn't like me. I failed all my homework. I made a mess of everything today. And you just take that word and you ask it back like a question. Everything? All? No one? These types of things. They're good fun. They're normally the one that you'll start picking up on first. Anyway, there is a lot of information in tonight's session in only half an hour. And the only way to get better at this is to go out there and to practice. You have to remember that you are learning how to be a parent as much as they're learning how to be an adult. And therefore, when new information comes in, all you have to do is pick it up and try it. Nobody's going to be watching you. There's no test at the end. Nobody's going to give you a performance appraisal about being a parent. The choice is now yours, whether you do it or not. Thank you for joining us over these 2 sessions. And if I could just say one last thing, is to remember that now at this age, your job has changed. You can no longer make it better by just medicating it. What you have to do is know what's going on here. And I promise if you take the time to do it now, see as they get older, it just stays, well, easy-ish, shall I say. But it definitely is easier than it would be if you knew nothing. The more you know, the more you know. Okay, thank you. I'm Brian from Headstrong. Again, a huge thank you to David. And there's a big team all behind the scenes here, making sure that all this techie stuff works, all your registrations work, all those types of things. When the evaluation gets sent out, it really, really helps us if you send it back. It lets e-Sgoil and the government and everybody know that they're heading in the right direction and they're telling you the right things. If there's anything else you would like us to speak about as well, please let us know. I would be delighted to be back. But until I get to speak to you again, I'm Brian, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Preschool. Thanks very much. Good night.